Hello and welcome to BW London Podcast. So, as we know, all people in power, whether it be politically or in a celebrity realm, they are all affiliated with one another. They're all part of some type of Freemason society and they derive their power through rituals and so on. More importantly, these people in power, they're not just connected randomly, they're not just illuminated people by chance. These people are connected by bloodlines, they are family, and you can Google any of this. You could type in Diana related to the Bush family and how that connects. They're related. So this goes a whole lot deeper than just getting a tap on the shoulder and being invited into Freemasonry. No, at the top of the game, these people are family.
What are the odds that the top two candidates for the presidency of a 300 plus million person nation would be 16th cousins and members of the same organization reputed by many to be the most powerful secret society in America?
What if I told you that just about every president is related to each other? A while back, a 12-year-old girl discovered something that I found very interesting. Her and her grandfather discovered that all US presidents, except for one, were related and traced back to the King John of England, who ruled England from the year 1199 to the year 1216.
School Watch tonight, the story of a 7th grader from Salinas who claims to have made a major discovery about President Obama. She and her grandfather say that President Obama is related to all but one U.S. president.
Well, Dan, the youngster spent the summer, really all summer, tracing the family tree of our presidents. Her conclusion that all the presidents, with the exception of one, share the same grandfather.
Well, first we start off with George Washington at the top, and then it goes to John Adams, Thomas Jefferson.
11-year-old.
It is believed King John of England was secretly associated with the Knights Templar. The Knights Templar was a Catholic military order that was made up of men from high society, basically the elite of those times. Even though the Knights of Templar was supposed to be Catholic, it is believed they secretly worshipped Baphomet and were actually satanic. The Knights Templar would eventually be forced to end, with many of the members being taken out. It is believed some members survived and eventually created the Freemasons we know today. Interesting enough, not only are almost all presidents related to King John of England, but it's also believed that all presidents were Freemason. Our first president, George Washington, was an open Freemason. There's a total of 14 presidents who were open with their Masonic associations. The presidents and all big politicians who are in power all belong to an exclusive club and are connected either by blood, dating back to England royalty, or a secret brotherhood.
Long before she was actually a princess, Lady Diana Spencer was already connected to the royal family.
It has been revealed that the Princess of Wales has more famous U.S. relatives and ancestors than most Americans, ranging from presidents to spies and actors, a Boston genealogist has claimed.
A consultant for Burke's Peerage, the who's who of British aristocracy, said there cannot be another family so stiff with royal connections.
Althorp, the childhood home and final resting place of Princess Diana, is currently the home of Diana's brother, Charles, the 9th Earl Spencer.
19 generations of Spencers have presided over this grand estate for more than 500 years.
The Spencer dynasty has produced politicians, military heroes, dukes and duchesses, and will one day furnish Britain with a king, Diana's son, Prince William.
Noted for their generosity, the Spencers once came to the rescue of a distant cousin fallen on hard times, the great-great-great-grandfather of George Washington.
In 2013 Netflix documentary Secrets of Althorp, the Spencers, Princess Diana's brother, Charles, 9th Earl Spencer reveals in an interview that people don't realize that George Washington's family, before they left England, were connected with mine.
They had a manor house near here, in the same country. The narrator explained that the Washingtons originally lived just 20 miles from the Althorp estate.
Among the notables on the family tree, says Gary Boyd Roberts, John Adams, Theodore, and Franklin Roosevelt, Revolution War spy Nathan Hale, matinee idols Rudolph Valentino and Humphrey Bogart, World War II Gen. George Patton and financier J. Pierpont Morgan. Lady Di is also distantly related to Vice President George Bush.
So it turns out that Diana, as well as Camilla, but the society that they derive from is the Skull and Bones, and they are bones men as well as bones women. But in learning that, it becomes really obvious to me that Harry and his book Spare is all ritualistic. I done a video a good while ago, maybe a year ago, where Meghan Markle is on the Ellen show playing out in plain sight her ritual that she's obviously done to get into power, and I assume for political power to come. But Spare is no different. This also is a ritual.
Where more than 100 boys lived in proximity. We ate together, bathed together, slept together. Everyone knew everyone's business, down to who was circumcised and who wasn't. We called it Roundheads versus Cavaliers. Everything's difficult, Doctor. Sitting, walking. Sex, I added. Worse, my Todger constantly felt like it was having sex. Like my penis was oscillating between extremely sensitive and borderline traumatized. The last place I wanted to be was Frostnipistan. I'd been trying some home remedies, including one recommended by a friend. She'd urged me to apply Elizabeth Arden cream. My mum used that on her lips. You want me to put that on my Todger? It works, Harry. Trust me. I found a tube, and the minute I opened it, the smell transported me through time. I felt as if my mother was right there in the room. Then I took a smidge and applied it. Down there.
Now, this stuff where he's telling us about his private parts and his mum is disgusting, and I'm surprised that I'm not seeing more people make the connection of how satanic and nasty that is. I can say quite clearly he's fantasized about his mum inappropriately, and he's probably shared that as part of the secret society where they make them tell them their secrets, and they go so far as they almost put things in their head to really exacerbate it, really.
Shocking then that one of their oldest secret society's initiation rituals historically was rumored to include sharing the intimate details of one's full sexual history.
The Skull and Bones brothers annually perform their infamous, strange, and sexually promiscuous initiations. Ear-piercing screams are often heard from outside, and many say the tomb radiates negativity that they feel physically. In the most rumored ritual, it is said each new initiate must lay down naked, blindfolded in a casket, and masturbate while other brothers stand in a circle watching.
They talked about all the different secrets that they have to get from them, and they even start to make them make things up. So whether he independently had fantasies about his mother or he was forced to as part of the ritual, who knows? Either way, it's satanic and it is disgusting. But like I said, these guys, their particular division, the Freemason society that they're connected to is without a doubt Skull and Bones. Now, 25, the number, which is the order out of chaos, is definitely something that they have been using for a long time. But I'm going to start in 1972 when you had Bloody Sunday. And even the poster that was demonstrated about this event, End the Terror, I'll put it up here, End British Terror. This particular poster is a recognition that this is a skull and bone ritual.
Irish poster published in 1972 showing the British flag bleeding onto a skull and crossbones with the text reading End British Terror, Support the Republican Movement. The poster was produced and issued in Dublin, here given its Irish name of Our Clear, and distributed in the north a few years after the start of the Troubles. Interestingly, the poster was noted in a 1972 Time magazine dispatch from Northern Ireland, with the journalist writing, "A poster on the wall proclaimed End British Terror and showed a Union Jack dripping blood on a skull and crossbones."
25 years later, 1972, then 1997, you have Diana's death. And as we know, the amount of energy that would have been received from that would have been outstanding. The whole world was grieving, literally, it was global. And then 25 years later, 2022, is when the book was written, Harry's book, unpublished, but definitely written and being publicized. That too is a ritual. And it's sacrificial what is going on. Hence why we see the talk about his mother, him constantly revealing disgusting things about his sex life. This is all part of revealing stuff. This is what's going on behind the scenes when he's doing rituals, and I guarantee that he's a bonesman. On top of that, as you know, he mentions the 25 Afghanistan people that he's killed All of this is ritualistic. None of these things happen or are said by accident. Carrie doesn't get to just go off and write a book, and nobody in power gets to determine what is in that book. So they are feeding off our energy at this time. As you know, it's the most popular selling non-novel book at the moment, and all the energy that's going off on it, they are feeding us, because these guys are connected to deities, they're connected to fallen angels. This is who they worship, and more than likely, I mean, who knows, it may go as far back as they fallen angels interbreeded with these people, and this is why they are all related. But ultimately, these guys are all part of one family. Nobody is a celebrity by accident. Nobody is put into power by accident.
Referring to themselves as Bonesmen, the members that make up these ranks range from Academy Award-nominated actors to the father of American football. Skull and Bones is responsible for more than 50 members of Congress and 3 U.S. presidents.
Of a long history of working with fallen angels, if not interbred with fallen angels.
Beyonce gives credit to fallen angels for her music. This is so demonic.
So Beyonce's in the news. She drops her 7th album called Renaissance. Renaissance, the 2nd song on it, calls her a god. She's a god. She's a hero. Well, maybe that's herself calling her a god. I don't really know. Now, we haven't done a lot on music, but it's obvious here that something weird's going on. Remember, this is the same Beyonce that also has spirits coming into her. She calls it Sasha Fierce. Sasha Fierce is her alter ego that takes over in the performances.
I guess I wouldn't be very entertaining on the stage, so Sasha comes out. Sasha is my alter ego, and she's fearless. You know, she can do things that I cannot do when I'm in rehearsal. I mean, I can try, but then it just doesn't happen. I can sing notes and sing strong and do all these things that when I'm just by myself, I can't do.
She's able to do things that she normally wouldn't be able to do, because she says she is a reserved personality. But this Sasha Fierce comes out of her and causes her to perform in ways that she couldn't normally perform otherwise. But what's the most interesting about this whole thing, the most recent news, is that she has said that, oh yeah, by the way, I want to dedicate this to all the fallen angels. Let's read this together. She says, I want to give special thanks to Rumi, Sir, and Blue for allowing me the space, creativity, and inspiration. And a special thanks to my beautiful husband and muse who held me down during those late nights in the studio. A big thanks to you, my Uncle Johnny. He was my godmother and the first person to expose me to a lot of the music and culture that served as an inspiration for this album. To all the pioneers who originate culture, to all of the fallen angels whose contributions have gone unrecognized for too long, this is a celebration for you.
And I use Beyonce, but she's one of many associated with fallen angels. The entire industry, political and celebrity, are all associated with that. That's why in the celebrity world, they've got all this stuff about their alter egos and things like that, and the other names that they use. I've done a video on that. And I've also done a video about the famous theatre production, Phantom of the Opera, which puts all of this into plain sight. That whole production is about a woman that can only sing, just as Sasha Fierce, and she describes that she can only sing when that demon is within her. That whole production is about that. I was blown away when I went to go see it. It's a classic, and it wasn't what I expected. And I didn't know what other story to take from it. People took so many different things, but it was so clearly about the angels and the demons that they work with for their talent and their skills and to be in fame. But more importantly, this is also about my personal video today, is about the bloodlines that they're carrying on. And all this stuff about the fallen angel, it is real. Okay, so let's look at some of the scriptures and what it actually says about fallen angels. So I'm going to start with Jude 1:6, which reads, oh, by the way, I'm reading the English Standard Version, mainly because it's the easiest one to be on my screen right now. But I mean, I tend to read things in all different versions just to get a real grasp of it. But in terms of simplifying things, ESV can be very good. So Jude 1:6-7 reads, and the angels who did not stay within their own position of authority, but left their proper dwelling, he is kept in eternal chains under gloomy darkness until the judgment of the great day. Just as Sodom and Gomorrah and the surrounding cities, which likewise indulged in sexual immorality and pursued unnatural desire, serves as an example by undergoing punishment of eternal fire. So that clearly states that fallen angels dwell in a place of darkness, and we know that people in power feed this energy. But let's continue. I'm then going to go to 2 Peter 2:4, chapter 2, verse 4, which reads, "For if God did not spare angels when they sinned, but cast them into hell and committed them to chains of gloomy darkness to be kept until the judgment day." I'm now going to read Genesis 6:1-22, which reads, "When man began to multiply on the face of the land and daughters were born to them, the sons of God saw that the daughters of man were attractive, and they took as their wives any they chose. Then the Lord said, My spirit shall not abide in man forever, for he is flesh. His days shall be 120 years. The Nephilim were on the earth in those days, and also afterwards, when the sons of God came into the daughters of man, and they bore children to them. These were the mighty men who were of old, the men of renown. The Lord saw that the wickedness of man was great in the earth, and that every intention of the thoughts of his hearts was only evil continually." That one is quite significant because it says these were the mighty men who were of old, the men of renown, which to me are the men in power basically that have been interbred with fallen angels, and these are the same people that we see today because their history goes back far. And coming to terms with understanding this, it's one thing to see this on YouTube or in a video, but unless it has biblical context, it doesn't make sense to me. And it's starting to make more and more sense. I'm now going to go to Revelation chapter 12, 7-9, which reads, "Now we arose in heaven, Michael and his angels fighting against the dragon. And the dragon and his angels fought back, but he was defeated, and there was no longer any place for them in heaven. And the great dragon was thrown down, the ancient serpent, who is called the devil and Satan, the deceiver of the whole world. He was thrown down on the earth, and his angels were thrown down with him." And we know through Job, which is another scripture, that Satan walks the earth. The next scripture I'm now going to go to is 2 Corinthians 11:14, which reads, "And no wonder, for even Satan disguises himself as an angel of light." I'm now going to read 2 Corinthians chapter 4, verse 4. Let me find that one. Which reads, "In their case, the God, lowercase g, of this world has blinded the minds of the unbelievers to keep them from seeing the light of the gospel of the glory of Christ, who is the image of God." So I'm going to leave it there in terms of what scriptures I've chosen to read, because I don't consider myself a preacher. It's just me trying to understand how all of these celebrities and politicians are related and what deity. I don't need to know specifically what they're worshipping or who they're worshipping. The main thing is that they're Satanists. But it's so much deeper than that. They have breeded with these fallen angels, and they continue to carry on this bloodline. And that is what we're seeing before us today. So while doing research on the Skull and Bones, what I found very interesting is that the different lodges, the Freemasons, they compete with one another for their tombs and to have sophisticated, deadly, satanic artifacts. And I'd imagine with the Skull and Bones, if they can get hold of somebody considered some type of prestige, if they could get hold of their skull and put them on their walls, then more power to them, basically.
As a secret senior society at one of the most widely recognized Ivy League universities in the world, you would think they would be above theft, right? Ever the scourge of campus, Skull and Bones has built a reputation for stealing souvenirs from other societies and buildings on campus. In typical society fashion, the Bonesmen transformed this crime into a game of sorts, referring to the game as crooking, with members attempting to one-up another constantly. In addition to the crooking of items from others on campus, there have been widespread rumors regarding the skulls and bones used for decor within the secret society's tomb. One story in particular purports the organization is in possession of the skull and bones of Geronimo. Letters dated 1918 have been discovered over the years with the claim that Prescott Bush, grandfather of George W. Bush, and 5 other bonesmen exhumed the skull and femurs from Fort Sill.
Inside the tomb, members are said to have their own standard time, which differs from ours by 5 minutes. It's believed that cutlery, which once belonged to Adolf Hitler, is preserved here.
The macabre decor of the clubhouse is well suited to Skull and Bones' distinctively ghoulish spirit. The tomb is said to be adorned with skeletons, skulls, and other dark works of art. There is a popular rumor that the stolen skull of the Apache leader Geronimo is a relic that is housed within the tomb's cadaverous walls. In 2009, Geronimo's descendants attempted to sue the organization to get the skull returned to them, but were unsuccessful. Portraits of its distinguished members line the walls of the tomb as well. Portraits that might feature such esteemed bonesmen, like former presidents George W. Bush, George H.W. Bush, and William Howard Taft, as well as the father of American football and the founder of the NCAA, Walter Camp, the man who helped create the Hubble telescope, Lyman Spitzer, Time magazine's founder Henry Luce, Supreme Court Justice Potter Stewart, former Secretary of State and Senator John Kerry, the so-called richest man in private equity, with a personal net worth currently valued at $15.7 billion, Stephen A. Schwartzman, political journalist and author Dana Milbank, and the youngest member of President Obama's cabinet, economist Austin Goolsbee.
I'm going to tell a story that hopefully it will be relatable. But while I was growing up, I grew up with somebody that was part of the Freemasons. Now, he's in a lodge that was for black people, so there was many black men. And of course, you know, in the business world, they get little favors and so on. And they really think they're a part of something. They're not. All they're doing is financially feeding the real Freemasons and the ones who actually are part of the bloodline. They will never get to 33 degrees, and it will never be of that type of power. But, you know, they feel good within what they're doing. And that same manager, as I've grown up, become an adult and gone into the business world myself, 3 times I've been offered to be a part of their Masonic lodges. Of course, I've said no. And even though I knew a fair bit about it, my biggest understanding was that this is satanic. And I've got an uncle that is also a part of the lodge who also invited me. But I always knew that it was not something good. But that same manager, he then joined a lodge that took him into the city of London City, where he got to go to more prestigious buildings. And, you know, I performed at one of them once, and they've got the whole black and white flooring, and the atmosphere in there is just disgusting. It's a horrible place to be in. And I'm not sure if it was a tomb or either way, it was where they have their lodging meetings. And the reason why I mention this story is because in terms of them stealing from one another, in fact, before I say that, I just like to say that even with him being in such a low case lodge that I know is really just to feed the finances, like I said, of the ones in the bloodline, they still did such disgusting things. I remember he would do spiritual baths. He brought chickens and different types of animals from England, and you know, people would talk about him being on the boat and releasing it. So he, you know, it's all very ritualistic. And there's always been a dark shadow that covers that man. I stay well away, well away. But my mention of the story is there's a guy also in the same industry that we're in, and he's very crooked. He became affiliated in the West Indies with some of the politicians at a really high level, and they were doing some crooked stuff. And that's just one of few things that he's done. But that very same, much younger, more my generation, he stole from the manager that I'm speaking of. He stole some really expensive instruments worth about £10,000, and he sold them on. So there were members of the band that the manager who he stole from, they were really angry. And while I was watching it play out, all I could see from the manager was admiration about what was stolen from him. And I just didn't get it. He seemed almost in awe of him. And I think it was when I sat back and meditated about it, I was like, oh, he's impressed. He's impressed with how bold he is, because everything that is good to them is what is evil, and it's do what thy will. And that was practiced within the band, whether it be drugs, alcohol, sex, all of that. It was always heightened at a degree. And on the other end, amazing music was being produced. Number one in this, number one in that. So yeah, it was just really interesting watching his admiration for him. And I sat there and I thought, everyone's almost getting frustrated. Why is he not angry? And I'm like, it's because he's impressed. He's impressed with the crookedness of it, you know? So this is, you know, very much how they think. But I just thought that worth mentioning because that was just my own personal experience of that. Okay, well, thanks for listening.